Good morning, everyone. I'm Alvin, and I'm from Singapore. I would just like to begin by asking, have any one of you been to Singapore? Singapore. Okay. Can I just ask you, what kind of impression do you get of Singapore when you visit Singapore?
It's clean.
It's clean, exactly. It's clean. So when I started, okay, basically what happened was when I went to Tartu, Estonia 2 months ago, and then I listened to a lecture given by the Let's Do It organization, and basically the enthusiasm rubbed off me, and I was like, okay, I want to go back home and do something. So I tell some of my friends, okay, let's go back home, and then we start to do Let's Do It in Singapore. And then many people actually ask me, do you think that this is possible? Singapore is such a clean city. You know, you don't see waste, big pile of rubbish. There's basically nothing. And this is what you see typically in Singapore. We have lots of greenery. We are known as a green city, you know, clean and everything. So how should we approach the topic then of waste management? One of the things that I would like to point out would be one of the more interesting things, because I work as a journalist myself. So during one of the interviews that I got to do this year, if any one of you went to the World City Summit, it was held in Singapore this year, and I get to speak to some of the waste management experts in Singapore. And what they were telling me is that, you know, Alvin, look, in Singapore we have the best system. The moment waste comes down, fast. You know, we process it, we remove it, we burn it off, we bury it fast. Everything, you don't see it. Just like, you know, the gentleman from zero waste concept, you know, it's fast. People don't want to see things. People want to get rid of the waste as fast as possible. We don't want to see anything. So, and then I asked him, so this is the fastest way, but is this the best way of doing things? You know, I don't think this is the best. So how can we then look at the structure that you have already built in and make it a better way? And what they are telling me is that in Singapore, we don't have the demand. People are not asking for things like this. You know, I don't need waste management. I don't need to segregate my waste. I want to see it gone ASAP, because Singapore is known as a clean city. We don't want to see waste. Basically, this is how it is like. So then it got me thinking, then how can we implement this? And you know, because it's of course like what we do in economics, right? Demand and supply. So when we have the demand, then we have the supply. Government will start to do things. Let's put the government thing aside. How to increase the demand? You know, for people to want to segregate their waste. You know, to increase the awareness. So, and one thing I would like to share, one very special problem that we have in Singapore is that because basically the government now is manipulating the whole equation. Basically, when we look at how waste are produced, we have the consumer as the determinant. We have the waste that they consume, and then the outcome, which is the waste. So the product they consume and the waste. So consumer, product consumed, and the waste. So now, what the government is actually doing is to manipulate the endpoint. So we remove all the waste as quickly as possible, so you don't see it, which is not what I think we should do. We should look at the determinant, which is the consumer that consumes the waste, right? So every time we go to mass gathering in Singapore, we go for a celebration, we have events like National Day celebration, we have our concerts and any sort of performance. One distinct thing that you see, which I think, you know, is one thing that you don't really see very often in Singapore, is that we leave behind the people that goes to such performance and concerts leave behind large amount of rubbish. Basically, people don't think about the waste that they are generating. People don't have the way. People don't bother about how it is managed. You know, we dump things, so it's very common. This is a common sight in Singapore after any major performance, after any major congregation of people. So which got me thinking, you know, that maybe perhaps we should work a little to try to adjust the mentality of people. And then I was just thinking, with this in mind, how we can bring the whole Let's Do It campaign into Singapore. And as I was discussing with Taisto a little about how I'm thinking of bringing this movement into schools. Okay, I haven't talked about this yet, about the army of cleaners that we have. You know, because as what I mentioned in the previous slide, we have a lot of rubbish. You know, people just throw it, people don't bother cleaning it up. Then what happens is that the government employs an army of cleaners. We have a lot of them in Singapore. If you go over to Singapore, you will see every single block we employ more than 10 cleaners from different countries to manage to basically sweep it every day to remove all the waste, so you don't see anything. So because of this army of cleaners that we have in Singapore, which is why I'm talking about the government being able to manipulate the endpoint as in removing all the waste as effectively as possible, so that we do not see them, and then with the low visibility, with them not being visible, we would perceive that it is not a problem that we are facing. But then again, it is a pressing problem that we have to solve. So I was just thinking, what can we do to basically improve, basically to gain awareness for environmental campaign in Singapore? And one of the things, because I studied in Singapore all my life, so one of the things that we experience in Singapore is that we have this program called the Environmental Community Involvement Program. In acronym, we call it CIP program. So in Singapore, what we do is that because of the CIP program that you have to fulfill, you have to get it done basically to promote to the next level. Every year, people are asked by their school to go out to collect newspapers, to do things for the environment. And they'll be thinking, oh no, it's another day that we have to do something for the environment again. It's basically a hassle. So people rush out of their schools, try to get some newspapers and get some trash cans and things like that, try to put them into bins, and then try to basically just, okay, I'm done with my part, so that's it. I'm thinking if we can basically approach them, and by doing this, by showing them the entire picture, allowing them to see what is the problem that we are facing today, and how then their part, what they can do to help the environment. And then basically, I believe this will give the CIP program a new significance. So I basically envision this three-pronged approach to basically talk to the students. And the first stage, we will go into schools. We will have information sessions like this, where we will actually share some information with them, what is going on in the environment, basically to link them up to the larger picture. And also to tell them what Let's Do It is doing in the rest of the world, and in other parts of the world, and how it has been a success. So with this in mind, when they start to do something, they will feel that, oh, I'm doing this as part of this global movement. So which has the added significance to what they are doing. So after the first part, we have the lecture, we have the information sharing, and then the next day, the next part will be the action, which we have the Let's Do It campaign in different schools. For the next year's campaign, I'm targeting to go to about 5 schools with about 1,000 students in every one of them. So basically, it still remains as a rather close kind of program where we only approach schools first for the very first stage. For every classes that we'll go to, we'll speak to them and ask them in particular what is the ways that you want to address, and what's the environmental problem, the waste management problem that you want to address, and we help them craft their own program. So in a way, they take this sense of belonging. So if I think that recycling of newspaper is a problem, then we collect newspaper and we see how we can properly treat it. So you'll feel that this is whatever thing that I came up with. So with schools, we go in, we give them the choice to what they want to do, and then we help them do it. We give them the expert advice that we can give, whatever expert advice that we can come up with to tell them. And the day where the action starts, we get all the students to go out to run their campaign, and this is where I think the beautiful things happen. You get the newspapers, you get your cans, you get everything brought back to the same place, with a new significance in mind, with the mentality change. I'm doing this as part of the global movement, how I can help the better of the environment. This is no longer doing just for the sake of doing. And then after we've got all these things gathered, then the students would then basically help to push all this thing to the proper waste management center that the gentleman previously mentioned, or how we can actually help them to better sort out the rubbish, and then from our location itself, and then send them over to places where we can manage it. So, and then this is something like perhaps the closed loop approach that that I've learned today, a new term learned today, about managing the waste from the moment that we have, how we can close the loop then, and then to give them a new mindset, thinking that this is something that I did for the environment and part of the global movement. Yep. Basically, this is all I have to share for now. And okay, just to do a bit of publicity, because in Let's Do It Singapore, it's only a 2-month-old organization after I came back from Estonia. And I believe that this is not one thing that I can do on my own. So I actually approached one of the local polytechnic, where then I get a bunch of students. Basically 5 of them, I chosen 5 of them who actually which have similar mentality as me. So I'm thinking that they must be thinking that waste management is something important. So I've got them on board and have with them running this as their final year assignment. So this will be an assignment that they're working on full time. So now some of my friends have been telling me, whoa, I've got 5 full-timers working for you, but I don't even have one. So I said, well, that's great. So now we have 5 people working on it. We'll try to push for it as much as possible and hope that by the mid next year we can see the result showing, and I can share with every one of you. Thank you. Any questions so far? Actually, I haven't.
Yeah, any questions?
Yes.
First, I'd just like to say excellent performance. Love your energy. You're going to do great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Secondly, I've got some friends in Singapore I would love to introduce you to who can probably support you in many different ways.
That is great.
Yeah. And then lastly, I'd like to ask, what does Singapore actually do with your trash? Because you're so, where do you take your trash? To Malaysia? Or
basically, because we have a lot of landfills.
You do?
Yeah, we have landfills, and basically what happened is that we do not, like what I mentioned, the government do not take an active approach to segregate the waste. So everything is brought to the same point. We incinerate it, we basically burn it, we process it. Actually, for the more toxic one, especially the industrial waste, some of them we heard that they're shipped away. But of course, all this are done hush-hush. We don't really get much of the information of it as of now.
And is there any recycling industry at all in Singapore?
The problem is a lot of people are coming out of initiative, but it's not profitable. So one thing I would like to learn from this conference basically is that how we can then engage the government, because I had a 10 hours break in Delhi previously before I came over. So I was very impressed. I walked around and then I saw a lot of organic cafes, and they were telling me, because then I asked them, so are there demand for organic coffee in Delhi, because there's so many of it in Delhi, right? So and then they told me some of it are government initiative. I went to the INA market. I'm not sure, are you guys aware of it? And then I saw a few cafes. I spoke to them. They said, because all these are government initiatives. So I'm just thinking, if we have to get the recycling industry going, the government funding is definitely essential. So how then we can get the government industry to fund this industry, which is the main point we are looking at now, actually. Yeah. And also, Lisa, I would like to get your slide if possible, because I want to share with some of my students about how media campaign
exchange slides.
Yes, exactly, can be run, especially with your approach. Yes.
Basically, give everything to Taisto. He will put it in
FTP
some kind of package.
Great.
Everybody can share
Yes. You can download it. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
This was very inspirational.
Thank you.